Hey, Happy New Year. I'm Father Roderick, and my friend here has just told me that he would like to read more in this upcoming year. Now I'm going to share some tips that will help him do that. So stick around. So in today's video, I would like to share with you my New Year's resolutions and talk about one of the most important ones. And it actually is a resolution I make every single year. But I failed pretty miserably this past year. And that is, I always tell myself at the start of the new year, I am going to read more. I want to read more. I love reading stories. I love reading books. But for many reasons, this past year, I just didn't read the number of books that I wanted to read. Now, the way I do this normally is I set myself a reading goal. I use several apps to track my reading behavior. The most well-known and most used today is still Goodreads, despite its flaws. But one of the things that I learned from using Goodreads was how motivational it is to set yourself a reading goal. And so I participated in the reading challenge for about 4 years now, and I started very modestly. At first, I think my goal was to read, 20, 25 books. But it was exhilarating to actually use a platform like that. And of course, Goodreads is just one of the many platforms that you can use. There's Storygraph, there's Fable, there are some other services that probably allow you to do similar things. But what I like to, whenever I finished a book, I would write a review, and then it would start to count down. And I knew that I had only, 10 more books to read before the end of the year. Now, encouraged by the success of this first reading challenge, I upped the ante every year. And so for 2 years in a row, I read, well, not 2 years in a row. Like 2 years ago, I set myself the goal of reading 100 books, and I made it. I was able to read 100 books. It did actually force me to read, I think, like 3 books on the 31st of December just to make it to the finish line. But it was still something I'd never done in my life. Just read so many books in a year, and it helped me to establish this reading routine. The year after that, I upped the ante even more, and I challenged myself to read 150 books. Now, of course, we're not talking about all Brandon Sanderson type massive books. It was a mix of everything. There is also some nonfiction in there. I like to include a variety of different genres just to keep things fresh, to motivate me. Sometimes I would just start reading a book and put it away for a while, read a few short ones, and then come back to the bigger books. But having read 150 books has been so impactful on my life because, of course, reading helps you in so many different areas of your life. It taught me so much. It helped me to become a better storyteller myself. And at the time, I wasn't really writing yet, but I think it definitely put in place a foundation for what I'm doing right now as an author. And so last year, on January the 1st, I repeated that goal. Like, okay, I made it 150 books. I will do it again. But there was one big change in my life, and that is I decided to start writing my own books. And I did. I wrote a total of 7 books, 6 drafts and 1 published book, as well as a children's book. But the downside of that was that my actual reading time was cut more than in half. And I ended up, despite me having set this goal of reading 150 books, I ended up reading, I think, about 62, 63 books, which is not even half of what I hoped to do. And I knew I wasn't going to make it, so I adjusted the goal all the way down to 50 books, a third of what I would normally read. But at the same time, I realized every time I finished a book, I realized how much I still loved reading and how much I missed it if I just couldn't find time to read. There was one month and that's the advantage of keeping track of your reading habits. One month that stood out from all the other months in terms of reading, the amount of books that I had been reading, and that was the month of March. And I don't even remember having read so many books, but I think I read an average of 3 books per week during that month. So I have to go back and look at my calendar and see what were the circumstances that helped me to read so much. What I do know is I want to get back to reading, despite the fact that I will continue to write. And I have a lot of writing plans about which I talk about in other videos here on this channel. But my big dream is to read more than last year. And here are a few of the things that I have learned over the past 4 years that have helped me to up the ante when it comes to reading, and to and also things that hopefully will help me to get back into this reading habit this year. The first most important thing was to read, and this it may sound very obvious. Wait, there's some snow here on the camera. Read what you love to read. Don't force yourself to read stuff that other people tell you to read, but you don't enjoy it. The more you love the book that you're reading, the more likely it is that you will finish it. Secondly, create a reading habit. Read, preferably, for me at least, it works to read every single day. To find myself at one moment during the day. And for me, the sweet spot is usually around dinner time or before that. Now, I live alone as a priest, so I can basically read whenever I want. I know that for other people that it's different. But what I would recommend is find yourself one time per day, or maybe, if that works for you, like establish a rhythm of maybe I always read on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But protect that time in your calendar as if it was an appointment. So I put it in red, which is usually for my appointments. And I say, this is like nothing, unless it's, of course, a life-threatening situation, but nothing should come between me and my book around that time. So having that appointment with yourself signal to yourself that reading is something really important in your life. We can all say, well, I wish I would read more, but if you really want to read more, then you should make it a priority. So protect that with your life, and then just read as much as you can. Another tip, for me, what helps me to read more is to read while I'm doing other stuff. Now, obviously, that requires me to read audiobooks. But the advantage is I can use a lot of the time that I'm cleaning the house, or I don't know, just doing the laundry, folding the laundry. I can still use that time to make progress on my books. Now, obviously, listening to an audiobook is not as fast as reading a book on paper or on an ebook, but it's better than nothing. And I have a few apps that allow me to listen at double speed, which is your brain is usually perfectly capable of doing. So mixing audiobooks with ebooks, hey doggy, is definitely for me one of the ways in which I have been able to read more, just using time that I am occupied otherwise. And the third tip that I have is read books from people that you know. So this past year, I've done a lot of interviews with authors, most of which are actually Dutch authors. And I just asked them about their works and about the world that they created. And the cool thing is when you talk to an author, or you can also do this by watching, for instance, interviews or listening to podcast interviews with authors, it gives you a much more personal investment in the story, because you know the writer, you know the world in which that author has created these stories. And having that personal connection with authors has been extremely helpful in motivating me to read. Sometimes I would just read a book that other people recommended, and they say, oh, you gotta read this. An example, for instance, Catabasis. I'm a fan of R.F. Kuang. I enjoyed several of her books. I think she's a really wonderful, interesting author. And so when her new book came out, everybody said, you got to read it. It's amazing. I started reading it. And it was good, but it was absolutely not on par with the other stuff that I read from her. It just didn't grab me. The story didn't grab me. And so I ended up finishing the book just because I always want to give a book a chance. Sometimes it becomes good towards the end. But after having read it, I thought, I've kind of fallen into the trap of just reading something because it was all the rage. I would rather now pick books from people that I trust, people that I know, and being able to give feedback to the author in person, saying, hey, I read your book and this is what I thought. That will give me an opportunity to have a conversation, which of course it's an amazing opportunity, I think, to expand the joy of reading beyond the reading itself. And I know now that I'm writing myself how important feedback is and how much you value it when people take the time to read your book. And so now that I know that, reading books from authors that I have encountered and I probably will encounter in the future gives me an extra incentive to read it, to take it seriously, to put some effort in it. And it's just a lot more fun to read a book from someone that you've actually met or met virtually by listening to an interview with that person. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? I did not expect it to snow today, but it's a really nice start of the new year. So what is my actual goal for this year? Well, seeing that last year, despite kind of losing my habit of reading regularly, I did manage to read more than 60 books. I think it is safe for me to set myself the goal of reading 100 books this year, which basically means 2 books a week. That's feasible. I can do that. And as a writer, and I hear this a lot from fellow authors as well, they say, well, hey, if you're writing books yourself, you just don't have time to read. But my experience is that reading actually improves my writing. It helps me. It even sometimes speeds up the writing process because I remember how, for instance, Brandon Sanderson writes stuff and then I can apply those lessons. You as an author, you never read just for entertainment. At least I cannot shut down my analytical side as well. So I read and then I learn from what I read. And that is going to help me in the writing process as well. So even if you're an author and you're busy and you don't have much time, I would still recommend taking the time to continue reading. And for me, another additional reason is because I read other people's works, I always have something to talk about with other authors and with other readers. And that, for those of you that are authors, is also important to have that ongoing conversation, not just about your own books, which can feel a bit promotional, even to yourself, but to talk about the stories that you love. And there should be no shame into saying, hey, I just read this book and this is how it inspired my own stories. I mean, that is, I think, the kind of natural, organic marketing that works really well for both your potential readers and for yourself. So those are my tips. I'm going to read 100 books. If you have any recommendations, post them in the comments. Love to hear your reading goals. And if you have any other questions or you struggle to read, bring them up. And in my next video, I can talk about it. And if you need any suggestions for books to read, I got a couple of them. Hey, buddy. Hey. Hey. You wanted to be on camera. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. If you're not subscribed to this channel, make sure that you are subscribed. And follow me on Substack, fatherroderick.substack.com. Take care, and again, Happy New Year.